You're listening to the Journey Podcast. Stress seems to be an inevitable part of our lives, but how can we actively work against accumulating more and more stress over our lifetime? Stay tuned to find out more. This episode contains strong language and listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. Today marks the start of Mental Health Week in Canada, and this is a special bonus episode. We all experience stress, some of us more than others. Sometimes stress can make us tired and irritated. Often it shows up in the form of physical or mental health issues. Trying to eliminate stress seems to be a futile adventure, and many of us just give up and try to deal with it the best we can. What if you could counteract and lower the amount of daily and lifetime stress you experience? What if there was a way to heal your pains and put yourself back into balance? To go after the life you have always dreamed of? That's exactly what today's guest discovered when he suffered the effects of stored stress loads and trauma that derailed his dreams. When conventional systems were unable to help him, he began his own journey of finding deep and permanent healing. At the age of 22, Christopher Lee Maher was a Navy SEAL in his prime with a sleek 1.8% body fat, and pound for pound, he was one of the fittest people on the planet. He was also completely unaware of the full impact that stress would eventually have on his physical, mental, energetic, and emotional well-being. He trained all day long at a level on par with professional athletes. In fact, after the SEALs, he began focusing on his dream of making it to the U.S. Olympic trials in track and field. A lack of awareness of the impact of high stored stress loads kept him from ever manifesting his dream. Piled up stress causes severe and traumatic damage over time, what Christopher calls stroma, a combination of stress plus time that transforms into trauma. Through intense pain, Christopher devoted all of his energy, time, and resources seeking out answers that would alleviate his discomfort. Eventually finding relief, Christopher applied the learned techniques and worked on himself 5 to 6 hours every day for 7 years. He put every biological system that was out of balance back in balance. Christopher went on to study at the Pacific College of Oriental Medicine and Yosan University, where he learned traditional Chinese medical practices and an equal amount of Western science and pathology. He has spent the last decade studying at the Universal Healing Tao System and is a master student of Grandmaster Mantak Chia at the Universal Tao Master School in Chiang Mai, Thailand. He is currently pursuing his master's and doctoral degrees in traditional Chinese medicine. His knowledge and experience led him to develop a comprehensive system of total physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual healing and integration, the true body intelligence technology. Christopher's practice is located in Los Angeles, California. He is an author, inventor, entrepreneur, speaker, coach, and innovator in the fields of health, wellness, and longevity. Without further ado, here is my interview with Christopher Maher. Hi, Christopher. It's so great to have you on the podcast. I've been looking forward to this interview because stress is such a huge topic for mental health and holistic healing. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Petra. I'm happy to be here. Your timing of what you're doing is perfect because I've decided to move into the world and start to share my awareness, my understanding, my wisdom, my techniques, the things that I've been using to help myself and help all the people that I've been helping for the last 22 years resolve and diminish the stress that keeps them from living a very vital, comfortable, inspiring, powerful life. And a little bit of my history is my mom, she suffered from some trauma, and she was underserved and undersupported at a very young age. And she decided at 29 to take her life. So that lets us know, one, she was suffering from mental illness. And, in the 60s, stress and mental illness wasn't a conversation, right? There was no one there that could appropriately serve my mom to get her into a space of wellness. And so if we go back and we look at her father, he died in his mid 40s, and he died of cirrhosis of the liver, which lets us know that he was severely stressed and suffered from mental illness. I mean, to drink yourself to death by the time you're 44 years old, that's quite a trick. Okay. So fast forward to my life, by the time I was 28, I had unrelenting discomfort in my body at every joint, ankle, knee, hip, low back, shoulder, wrist, elbow, neck. Okay. All on one side of my body. And I dealt with a lot of stress as a young child, right? When my mother was in her state of mental illness, she decided to leave me with a babysitter for a significant amount of time. The house that I was in, there were a lot of drugs, there was a lot of alcohol around. And the woman, Miss Baskerville, decided that the best way to teach me to not play with matches was to put my hands on the gas stove. And I was 3.5 years old. I was in and out of hospitals, right? I went to Geisinger, and they did a bunch of treatments on my hands. And that went on until I was 7 years old. So for 3.5 years, I spent a large portion of that time in the hospital and was under socialized, right? And fortunate for me, I love puzzles. And so they always brought puzzles in, and I started to spend all my time working on puzzles. And that helped the development of my mind in a very specific way, but it hurt me in a very different way because I wasn't with children in school doing the things that other kids were doing on a consistent basis. And then I had a home life where I had a mother who was severely intimidated by the male presence. And because of the type of trauma that she went through, in retrospect, it all makes sense to me now. But then when you're a 5-year-old child, right, when you're 6 years old, and you're receiving physical and emotional abuse, and you're scared of your mom, and you're walking around on eggshells all the time, you don't understand that there's going to be an impact. And if I look back, I was a bedwetter, I bit my nails, I was a stammerer, I stuttered consistently. And so that let you know that my nervous system didn't even have the ability to take in a consistent breath. And I never ever really felt comfortable in the presence of women because my abusers, my trauma givers were female.
Mm-hmm.
And after my mom took her life, I went into the foster care system. And I landed with a woman who was very kind to me and very generous. And, that really sort of started the healing process for me. And after about 7 months in foster care, I got an opportunity to attend a privately well-endowed boarding school in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And that's when I started to get some space to start to heal from some of my childhood trauma. And then that ended up into a whole other load of stressors and traumas that I really wasn't equipped to deal with. And to be honest with you, the level of support that I was getting at the boarding school was severely inefficient. And they were coming from a good place of service, but they were ignorant in terms of their ability to serve children who had been through circumstances like the ones that I had been through. And while I was in the boarding school, I was attracting more traumatic events. And I didn't have anyone that I could reach out to inform and tell them that I was suffering a great deal. And so I did my best to cope with what was happening there. And I graduated from the school. I went to college. Took me all of 2 semesters to fail out of school because I wasn't putting in the effort and the time and the energy necessary. And I couldn't see the value of the educational system at the time. So I needed something that would challenge me. And I went and I was staying at a boarding school brother of mine's house with him and his mom. His mother's name is Martha Riggleman. And she brought me in. She picked me up on my birthday. And she said, listen, you're going to come live with me. She picked me up, brought me to her house. And within a few months, I went downstairs. There was a biannual SEAL Team magazine. And I opened it up. And the cover struck me at first because I saw, 7 or 8 boat crews of guys. And what that means is 7 guys running down the beach with telephone poles on their shoulders. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, that's for me. And then, I went through the magazine and I realized by the time I got to the end that these people were going to be able to challenge me because I had a lot of potential. I had a lot of emotional intelligence. I had a high level of physical intelligence. I had a high level of spiritual intelligence. And I had a high level of physical intelligence. And I just looked at them as, okay, finally, somebody's going to be able to push into me. And push into me, they did, right? They challenged me physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And I got through that experience and I adopted some principles and some ways of functioning as you do when you're in an institution that were relevant when I was in SEAL training in the SEAL teams, but were irrelevant once I left that community. And I decided to leave that and get back into track and field. So I left the SEAL teams, and rather than re-upping and picking up a nice bonus check, I decided to take a risk, go out on my own, and go back to school and address some things that I had overlooked. And I got back into training in track and field with the goal of getting to the Olympic trials. And, that was my dream. But if I look back from the position I'm in now, relative to the principles that I had adopted in the SEAL teams, that dream was going to be a fantasy. And that's what it was. And I continued to train and work really hard. And I ended up with a lot of injury to my body that because I was pushing my body too far to attempt to get something that was never going to make up for the holes in my development as a child, right? In retrospect, no recognition that I could get from outer achievement was ever going to make up for the lack of maybe emotional security that would have been provided for me if I was raised in a household where I had a mom and dad in a loving environment. Mm-hmm. And so that was a wake-up call, and I had to make a choice. And so the choice that I made, and I made it at the very last moment, was to reach out to a friend and go, look, I'm having some problems. I need a solution, and it's difficult for me to reach out. Can you help me? And help me he did. Came over, he brought his yoga mat and a juicer, and he started to teach me different ways of relating with my body that were more functional, that were kinder, that were more loving, instead of this brutal way that I was addressing and utilizing the physical intelligence that God gave me. And that changed my life forever. Because now I knew that getting back to who I was before I entered into the SEAL teams was a real possibility. And once I knew that that was a possibility, I poured all my heart, my soul, all my resources, all my effort and energy and consciousness into putting myself back together. And putting myself back together, I did in a way that was uniquely profound compared to anyone else who'd ever lived on the planet. Because fortunate for me, I figured out through intensive study and investigation that people no longer have to live with a high level of daily accumulated stress or a high level of lifetime accumulated stress. And I applied these techniques and these strategies again and again and again, hours a day, months out of the year, many years out of a decade, until I refined my body, my brain, and my nervous system to a point where I could move into the world and be of service in a profound way and resolve things in the world that have never, ever been resolved. And I've been very fortunate to have these opportunities to do so. And so that brings us to date.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate this very much because it gives us a lot of insight into how you're managing stress and how you're finding ways to cope with the situations that you are experiencing. And there are many listeners, I'm sure, that are also struggling with challenges in their lives. So thank you so much for sharing that. And it sounds like there were a few different things going on. So I'm wondering, what is the difference between when you just manage stress and you're going through things, life throws things at you, you're managing. What's the difference between that and actually resolving stress as you started to do later on?
I think the first step and the difference is it's actually systematic. And what I mean by that is most humans until recently are living in what's called stress ignorance. And what that means is that they don't realize that the actions that they're taking have consequences on a daily, a weekly, a monthly, a yearly, and a lifetime basis. Okay.
Hmm.
And so the majority of the planet is in stress ignorance. And then we have people like you that are getting the good word out. And we have people like me that are building systems so that people can have what are called positive stress management tools. The challenge is that most humans are addicted to negative stress management tools. So let me give you an example of a negative stress management tool. Excessive exercise, right? Excessive, obsessive fixation on physical form, nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, refined sugar, pharmaceutical drugs, recreational drugs, explosive arguing, withdrawal, inappropriate emotional reactions, debilitating states of rage, right? These are all negative stress management tools. Dishonesty is the greatest of all of those, okay?
Hmm.
And then you have positive stress management tools, which since we opened the borders in the United States and other countries to allow Eastern cultures to enter into European, Westernized cultures, what they brought with them were Eastern philosophies, right? Meditation, breath work, yoga. These are all things that were absent where I live in the American culture until recently. And now, guess what? You can drive through any city in the United States, and guess what you're going to find? A lot of the coffee shops, they've been replaced by juice bars, right? A lot of the dance studios have been replaced by yoga studios, right? A lot of the mom and pop lamp shops have been replaced by wellness centers. And so you see this emergence recently of the engagement in positive stress management tools. The challenge is this, is that a positive stress management tool allows you to deal with what I call your daily accumulated stress, but it never ever really affects your lifetime accumulated stress load. Because I'm the person that's identified on the planet, there is such a thing called your lifetime accumulated stress load. And so when we compare stress management, what we're really taught with stress resolution, the difference is your daily accumulated stress load versus your lifetime accumulated stress load. So when we're looking at stress resolution, we're talking about reducing the lifetime accumulated stress load. And the question is, well, what's the difference between the daily accumulated stress load and the lifetime accumulated stress load? Where your daily accumulated stress load is every bit of negative stress and positive stress that you imprint and absorb into your body, brain, and nervous system at an emotional level, at a mental level, at a physical level, at a spiritual level, every day within a 24-hour period, that does not get resolved efficiently by your sleep. And your sleep, we're going to give that a different name. We're going to call that your restore, repair, and recovery rate.
Mhm.
So if my daily accumulated stress load is high in terms of distress, and my restore, repair, and recovery rate is low, guess what happens? I take Monday's stress that's unresolved into Tuesday. And now that becomes part of my lifetime accumulated stress. And now I take Tuesday into Wednesday. Then I take Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday into Thursday. And then I take Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. And I finally get a little bit of a reprieve, a tiny break to restore myself on Saturday and Sunday. But now I've been so busy working that I don't have the ability to actually enjoy, because I don't have enough energy left over to do the things that inspire me, right? So now the first week in January ends up, the stress from that week ends up into the second week. And the first and second week end up into the third week. And guess what? Do that month after month, week after week, year after year. And then one day you go in for a mammogram, right? Been eating healthy, been doing your yoga, having honest conversation, doing your breath work, meeting with a therapist, talking about the things that bother you from your childhood. And they say to you, oh, hey, we found a lump in your breast. And you're like, me? How's that possible? And then before you know it, the report comes back, you have breast cancer. They dig a little deeper. They realize that actually you have cancer all over your body. And then within 3 years, you're off the planet if you don't get chemo or get radiated to death. And so the reason why that's happening is because people's investment into their stress management tools, they got to either choose, they're going to choose negative stress management tools, or they're going to prudently choose positive stress management tools. And again, what's a positive stress management tool? Anything that raises your frequency higher than your average frequency. Okay. And so when you're doing breath work, you're raising your frequency above a mean state of function. When you're doing something like yoga or exercise or highly positive mental activities or highly positive emotional activities, you go dancing with your girlfriends in an environment that makes you feel safe. Anything that you're doing that raises your frequency is going to lift you up. And when your body gets lifted up and your frequency and your energy is higher, it now has permission to go out and find the things inside of you where there's problems. But here's the challenge that no one is speaking about, because the truth is they don't have the information. 99.99999% of all humans, their brains are living in what's called a lateralized state of function. What does that mean in layman's terms? It means electrically, one hemisphere is turned on and one hemisphere is turned off. Well, guess what happens when one hemisphere is turned off? Your brain doesn't have the ability to see where the problems exist. And you know what it does? It moves around your body blindly. And now it doesn't have the resources to solve the physiological and the systemic and the biological problems that are being created underneath. And now you go in and you get your mammogram, and guess what? Your report that you get back that you have a lump and you have cancer. Guess what that gives you? That gives you information. And that information gives you an opportunity to go, oh, how come my brain didn't see this problem? How come my energy wasn't able to resolve this very minor issue, if my brain can see it, it can resolve it. Okay? If my energy's high enough, it can resolve it. How come my body is lacking the ability to resolve these very simple things that are going on? Why was this going on for 2 or 3 years and I didn't know it? It's simple. When your brain operates at a lateralized state of function, it's impossible for it to prioritize what it can't see. Okay, so for the listeners, put on a blindfold and have one of your friends drop you off at a grocery store. And I want you to pick up a meal, your family's favorite meal, without asking for help. And you have a blindfold on, you have to keep your eyes closed. That's what you're doing when all of your focus is on your daily accumulated stress. So, how do you resolve it? How do you get to a place where you can reduce your lifetime accumulated stress? It's simple. You have to get your brain in a state of whole brain thinking. So now it can prioritize and it can send out the troops to resolve and put down the fires that are raging inside of people's bodies. You know, when I was born in the 60s, cancer wasn't a thing. Right? But every decade since I was born, it becomes more prevalent. So we have greater diagnostic tools. Supposedly, we have greater states of medicine. Okay. We have more opportunities for people to diagnose through the new technology that's been developed. We have access to better quality food. We have more information about the impact of pesticides, insecticides, poor sleep habits, the excessive use of technology. We have all the information, and yet, with all the information, we still have greater states of dis-ease, which is disease, every single decade, every single year. Those things continue to increase. And the question is, well, why? It's simple. If you put your energy into managing your stress load with negative stress management tools, you're only throwing more logs on a fire that's already enormous. So negative stress management tools are only building more heat in your body. Okay? If you put all your faith in stress management tools, positive stress management tools, you fail to realize the limitation of those tools. And the limitation of those tools is they help you deal with your daily accumulated stress. Now, if you want to put your faith in stress resolution, now you have tools that help you deal with your lifetime accumulated stress. The stress that came into you precognitive, womb to 7, right? And then semi-precognitive, 7 to 13. Mm-hmm. And now the question is for the listeners, well, why is that important? Your daily accumulated stress deals with the stress you absorbed within the last 24 hours. And its potentiality to resolve your lifetime accumulated stress is next to zero. So what do you need to deal with your daily stress load? You need a screwdriver, right? A very small, simplistic tool to deal with your lifetime accumulated stress load. You know what you need? You need big drivers. You need sledgehammers. You need tools that generate a greater amount of force, a force that is equal to or greater than the measure of your unresolved lifetime accumulated stress loads. So what kind of tools do you need for that, right? You need tools that generate a massive amount of force. Well, the question is, what kind of tools do that, right? Well, you're made up of a body that has different bodies. So your physical body, but guess what? Inside of your physical body is your emotional body, right? Your spirit body emanates from out in and in out as well. And then you have your mental body plus your physical body. So you need a tool to be able to resolve the stress load that's unresolved over your lifetime and your daily stress that's sitting inside of you. And the greatest way to discover where you're distorted is wherever you have pain, right? And so some people, their pain is emotional. Other people, their pain is physical. Other people, their pain is energetic. They're exhausted. Other people, their pain is mental. Okay, so you get physical, mental, emotional, spiritual pain. You have to have a tool that helps you resolve those levels of stress, those levels of tension, those levels of distortion. And so one of the tools, which is brilliant, is called Bestercise. What does that mean, Bestercise? Well, BEST stands for bioenergetic self-transformational sequences. Okay? And when you're doing Bestercise, you're using isometric, concentric, and eccentric contractions to remove a bit of, well, all of the daily accumulated stress from the day before and some of the lifetime accumulated stress load every day. And then guess what happens after about 28 days to 60 days to 90 days? Your whole reality changes. Because as you reduce your lifetime accumulated stress load, guess what happens to your intellect? It increases in a reflective and relative manner. So not only do you become more efficient and more relaxed and calm and grounded, your intellect increases, which allows you to make greater and more subtle distinctions about your reality, which allows you to be more successful at experiencing what it is you truly want to experience at a relationship level, at a professional level, at a financial level, at a sexual level, okay, at a spiritual level. And if you can engage in something as simple as Bestercise on a consistent or semi-consistent basis for a short amount of time every day, 15 to 20 minutes, 10 minutes, every day you get smarter. Every day you actually physically become more attractive. Because guess what? You have channels of energy that move through your body. Some of them end in your face. Some of them begin in your face, right? Some of them begin in your feet. Some of them end in your feet. Some of them begin in and around your chest, right? Some of them end in and around in your chest. And so when you open up these channels, when you start to remove this debilitating amount of tension that humans have in their bodies, you suddenly become more free. Free to do what? Free to choose what's in alignment for you. But the most powerful part of all of this is that everyone in your life that's in your sphere of influence now is also highly impacted in a positive way, because all nervous systems orientate to the highest functioning nervous system in a collective field. When you're looking at, we're going to go back a little bit, when you're looking at your daily accumulated stress load and your lifetime accumulated stress load, if both of those are high, your restore, repair, and recovery rate is low. As a woman, when you move into the world, women are judged heavily by society, by their families, by their friends, and by themselves on the way that they look, on the way that they present themselves. Because women are naturally more magnetic than men are. Okay? Men are more electric. Women are more magnetic. And so when you're under that kind of pressure, right? It's daily, right? It's consistent. Every time you go to the bathroom, there's a mirror right in front of you, right? Every time you go to a business meeting, there's somebody in there judging you, right? Well, guess what happens when a woman is in alignment, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but literally her physical body, her body, brain, and her nervous system. All the people around her look at her and respond to her in a different way. They pull away from her looks and they move into her character. They're inspired, they're attracted to the way that she's being, the way that she's feeling, as opposed to the way that she's looking. And now she becomes a self-empowered unit in the world that can change all of reality. If we had 10,000 women in the world that put a singular focus on reducing massive amounts of lifetime accumulated stress, to include all of the oppression and suppression that women have dealt with for tens of thousands of years. Okay? If we had 8 to 10,000 women that put a focus on that for a year, on reducing their lifetime accumulated stress load by 50%, and their daily accumulated stress load every day, the world would change overnight. Why? Because leadership is a feminine quality. Freedom, it's a feminine quality. Sensuality, intimacy, it's a feminine quality. Openness, it's a feminine quality. Empowerment, it's a feminine quality. Humor, it's a feminine quality. So if women are engaged in being in supreme alignment, everywhere they go, the grocery store, the football game, the PTA meeting, the school meeting for their kids, the business meeting, everything in the meeting, everything at the school, everything in the environment that they go to, it changes to a more harmonious, loving, open, spacious, intimate experience. And that for me is inspiring. That's why I want to be on podcasts with individuals like you, Petra, that are serving the female population powerfully. And for all the women listening, you have to reduce your lifetime accumulated stress load. The aging process will stop immediately. Okay? I'm going to be 60 soon. If you met me, you wouldn't think I was a day over 37. Okay? Is it because I'm magical or no, not at all. Was I born with special genes? No, I come from a family of alcoholics. Okay? I come from a family of people that are blue collar workers, right? That know nothing about health or wellness for generations, right? So there's no genetic predisposition for me to look young, right? But here's the thing. If the thing that robs my looks, that robs my beauty, that robs my magnetism is simply stress and tension and distortion, and all I have to do is remove that, and I arrest the aging process, and I impact my environments more powerfully by simply arriving at that moment and being myself. What woman would be uninspired by that opportunity? And so hopefully, with the education that you've been given, you're willing to take some heartfelt action to your benefit, knowing as a mother, every bit of change I create in myself changes my child's opportunity to succeed in the world at authentically being received as who they really are. What mother would choose to ignore that opportunity? I think a lot of men would, right? Men are single-minded, they're singular focused, but women see bigger pictures, right? They have a much more dynamic mind. Women have, across the four worlds, they're generally more intelligent, okay? And leadership is a feminine quality. And so Bestercise is like the best friend of every woman on the planet, right? Reduces menstrual pain, reduces headaches, helps you wake up feeling alive and present, activates and stimulates all of your organs, causes all the symptoms that you're dealing with in your body to be severely reduced, opens your mind, quiets the brutal inner critic that women deal with on a consistent basis, allows you to present yourself and feel more confident in being exactly who you are. Like, what woman would ignore that opportunity, right? What woman has been craving an opportunity to have those experiences? And so I hope, this is what you've learned so far is powerful. And, we can go a little bit deeper if you like.
Mhm. I do have one question for you. Reducing the lifetime accumulated stress loads, is that something that you do to a point, or is it actually possible to completely remove that?
Oh, you're going to love this. This is the most fabulous question. I'm glad you asked. So
I'm just curious about that.
I lived in excruciating pain and discomfort, right? And that was 2001 is when I had my first experience of, after what, dedicated investigation of 4 years and a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money. Money you can always get back, to time and energy, I can't. After all that time, I got out of that level of discomfort and pain, and it's never come back. Never. Okay. Capital N, capital E, capital V, capital E, capital R. Because, see, here's the beautiful thing. When you remove and reduce your lifetime accumulated stress load by 50%, what happens is the way that you're operating, the way that you're perceiving reality changes in a relative and a reflective manner, which means you can no longer manifest the tension and the distress that you were absorbing and modeling before, because you're functioning different in the world. Here's the thing that needs to be understood, and I'm so happy you asked this question. All of the tension, stress, and distortion in every single human's body on the planet comes from their limited perceptions of reality. What does that mean? It means everyone that's listening, at some point, you were scolded as a child and you were punished or ignored in some fashion. And that caused you, in your precognitive state, which means you don't understand context as a child, you began to create some ideas about reality that are false. And now your wounded inner child has taken those perceptions and continues to feed them to your conscious mind from your subconscious stress and unconscious trauma. And now you move through the world continuing to attempt to apply strategies and belief systems that are irrelevant to who you are today in terms of your level of maturity and your age. And as you begin to continue to engage and employ the adopted winning strategy of a 3.5-year-old child, as a 45-year-old woman, as a 35-year-old woman, as a 50-year-old woman, you continue to reinforce the stress states, the distorted emotional states, and the stressed, tense states in your body again and again every single day. So the question is, what's the solution? And the solution is stress resolution. Why? Because stress resolution systems are there to create a pattern interrupt, right? What pattern are we interrupting? We're interrupting the way that you think and perceive reality. So the way you think and perceive reality creates a massive amount of stress. That stress puts your brain in a lateralized state of function, which means it turns off one hemisphere electrically. And now you employ your winning strategy. What's your winning strategy? Everything that you do to avoid punishment, rejection, humiliation, violence, discomfort, pain, and the potential of death, right? What's your brain for? It's here to keep you safe. So now you keep employing the strategies of a precognitive child that's attempting to avoid punishment, rejection, humiliation, violence, pain, discomfort, and the potentiality of death. Well, as you continue to re-engage those states every single day, you accumulate a little more stress, a little more tension, a little more distortion. And that goes on again and again and again and again and again and again until you end up at the doctor's office getting a mammogram, and the report back to you is you have a lump in your breast, they need to do a biopsy, and let's hope for the best. Well, where did that all start? That all started with the precognitive beliefs that that child engaged in to avoid punishment, rejection, humiliation, violence, pain, discomfort, and the potentiality of death. Why? Because women, above all, want to feel safe. Okay? And so when you employ those strategies that that little girl was employing, great, perfect strategy to have when you were under the care of your unconscious parent. A terrible strategy to employ as a 35, 40, 45, 50-year-old woman. Okay, so what do you have to do? You have to create a pattern interrupt. You have to interrupt the pattern successfully. And the only way to do that successfully, and I say only with an intense amount of confidence, because I've done 100,000 hours of investigation. What does that mean? That means every 10,000 hours is what they call a level of mastery. I have 10 of those, okay? I have 10,000 hours. So in terms of this awareness around this level of consciousness in the world, around stress and tension and distortion and freedom and personal development, the information I'm giving you has been tested and tried 100,000 hours. And I did practical research in the moment on myself, which I don't even include the hours that I worked on myself. These are hours helping other people grow beyond their own limitations. And the only thing that can be truly successful is a pattern interrupt. And when you create a pattern interrupt, guess what happens? You close all of those weak doorways and they get soldered shut. And the person no longer has a pathway to doing things the way that they were doing them before. That was toxic, that was unconscious, that was full of anxiety and anger, frustration, agitation, fear, and self-righteousness. You actually get to step away from those states of function because those states of function are actually irrelevant to who it is we really are.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you talk about Bestersize, and I'm curious, what should we imagine that looks like? What is Bestersize?
What is Bestersize? So
I want to know.
yes. I'm going to start from the beginning where I said before. Bestersize is the best form of exercise, right? And the reason why I named it best is so when I'm working with the people that I work with privately or my practitioners, I get to send them a text and go, did you do your best today? And then they're like, oh yeah, I did my best today, which is bioenergetic self-transformational sequences. So imagine yoga was like a skateboard, right? It's used for transportation. It can get you somewhere. But imagine if I could transform that skateboard into the Starship Enterprise. And I could get, instead of getting to Mars, if in, I don't know, a year and a half, we could get there tomorrow. Bestersize is the fastest way, the most efficient way, the most productive way to develop your body, brain, and your nervous system. And so what does it look like as a practice? As a practice, it looks maybe about 15, 20 minutes a day, right? If you have a little bit more time and energy, maybe you do an extra set before you go to bed, right? For the people who have sleep issues, you do it before you go to sleep because you have the most amazing night's sleep. The people who have energy issues, you get up and you do it first thing in the morning. So then your day is unbelievable, right? And so some people have to choose, do they want to have a better night of rest, or is it more productive for them to do it at the beginning of the day? If you want to do it, you can do it twice a day.
Mhm.
right? And here's the wonderful thing. Every one of the positions is related to a specific organ. So let's say you're a listener on the podcast right now and you suffer from constipation. Well, guess what? We have a Bestercise for your large intestine, right? We have a Bestercise to increase your elimination. We have a Bestercise for increasing the production of your digestion. So now you go to see your naturopathic doctor, you go to see your MD, whoever it is, and they give you a report back. They've done a blood test. They say, hey, your pancreas is moving a little slow, your kidneys look a little stressed, what's happening? And you're like, oh, I'm dealing with a little constipation. My menstrual cramps are really strong. I keep getting these consistent headaches. Well, guess what? You now get to take that information and go, hey, I want to use this Bestercise. I'm going to engage in that. Do that for 30 days. You know what happens to your symptom? It disappears. Why? Because you are engaging in a successful pattern interrupt. Again, whatever is in your mind is in your body. Whatever's in your body is in your life. If you want things to change in your life, you have to do the prudent thing, which is going into your body. And I'm not talking about going to the gym and rowing and running and swimming. That's all like baseline, basic activity. Okay. I'm talking about high level physical, functional development and movement that answers the call every single time. I recently had, a doctor show up and been in bed for 15 years, okay, and suffering from debilitating lack of energy, right? Within a week, guess what? She sends me texts every day. Oh, my day is great. I'm out of bed. Things are working, okay? 15 years. Took me 5 days to resolve that, right? But now here's the wonderful thing. I always teach people what I know. Why? Because I want people to feel empowered. Empowered to do what? Take control of their own life. If you want more energy, do these three. If you want to communicate better, work on these two. If you want to have better boundaries, do this one every day. If you want to have a better sex life, you have pain in your vagina, it's uncomfortable, or you're having some kind of consistent infection every time you have intercourse, work on these three, right? When you open the body and you remove the tension, okay, well, when you remove the tension and you open the body, now energy and consciousness can flow into that part of the body. And guess what the body does? It heals, it integrates, it activates, it stimulates itself into a greater state of homeostasis, right? Your mean state of health, it rises. And now you yourself, through the practice of exercise, gets to choose what's correct for you. Now, what could be more empowering than that? Because you already have the reports. You go to your acupuncturist. Maybe you're an acupuncturist. That's your thing. Or you go to your massage therapist. He's like, wow, man, your upper neck is like really, really tight on the right-hand side. And you go, oh, well, let me get out this map. Oh, what channel of energy runs through there? Oh, the gallbladder runs through there. Oh, what's the gallbladder associated with? These three things, all kinds of headaches. And then you're like, okay, let me remove the tension from my gallbladder channel. Guess what happens? Your headache disappears, right? So you get to be your own steward in your own wellness journey, right? And now guess what happens when you heal the body? You start to heal the mind.
Mhm.
Right? When you heal the body, you start to heal the mind. And now suddenly, instead of making poor choices, instead of feeling repressed and suppressed and being avoidant or passive aggressive or dealing with debilitating states of anger or high levels of anxiety, every day you're reducing that load. And every week it's getting reduced more. And then every month. And before you know it, you might meet somebody like me 3 years later, and I taught you how to work on yourself. And I go, say, so how's your depression? And you look at me like, what are you talking about? Depression? I've never had depression. Okay. Because we've removed it so successfully from your body. It's no longer part of your story because you had a successful pattern interrupt. And guess what happens? Your mind begins to recognize into a healthy state of function. But if I'm addicted to the daily drugs, okay, negative stress management tools, okay, what are they again? Nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, refined sugar, pharmaceutical drugs, recreational drugs, food colorings, preservatives. If I'm addicted to bringing those into my body, into my life, into my sphere, I'm constantly adding more heat to my system. In Chinese medicine, heat rises in the body and they call it misting the mind, which means mental illness. So, what do? You then move towards positive stress management tools. You eat foods to keep your body cool. The heat gets reduced. The mind is less misted. And suddenly you can see clearly. You have a reduction in anxiety. You have a reduction in fear. You have a reduction in stress. You have a reduction in self-righteousness. You have a reduction in your, what you would call your brutal inner critic. Now, instead of having a brutal inner critic, now your inner critic is, guess what? They're inspiring you. They're cheering you on. And you have a reduction of pain in your body. And yet, if you take no action, no heartfelt action to your own benefit, you will continue to suffer needlessly. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when my mom was alive, there were no choices. It's now 2023. I'm alive. I'm here. I'm on the planet. I have tools that actually work. They do what they say and they say what they do. And if what you want, and your listener here on the call, is to feel freedom and happiness and joy and empowerment, and all you have to do is invest 15 to 20 minutes a day, what are you waiting for? Find me. Read my book. First step. Name of my book, Free for Life. A Navy SEAL's path to inner freedom and outer peace. I was there. I get it.
Yeah. Wow.
Let me
Thank you
help
so much
you.
for sharing that. Mhm. Yeah. And I would encourage all the listeners to connect with you because we all have stress in our lives. We all have things we've been through. I don't know a single person that can tell me they've never had any stress. So this affects everybody. It affects us on a physical level, a mental level, an emotional level. So many different things that come at us. So definitely would encourage listeners to connect with you and talk about this. And how can listeners connect with you? What do you offer? What programs and services do you
What
offer?
programs do I offer and services? It's a very good question. I work with people in a group setting who want to learn and are inspired to help other people, right? They want to know what I know and they want to utilize that in order to help other people grow beyond their unresolved stress at a daily level and their unresolved lifetime accumulated stress load. So that's one way of engagement. The second way of engagement is for me to work with you one-on-one. And the simple way to do that is, first, you have to read the book. You would go to truebodyintelligence.com. At True Body Intelligence, you would send us an email at support@truebodyintelligence.com. My assistant will get back to you with the steps necessary in order for us to get on a call and see how I can serve you powerfully. And then obviously read the book. And as a support, what I did is I wrote an album, right? The album's called Heart and Soul. When you're doing your best exercises or the things that I teach you, have that music running in the background. And I promise you, you will have a very positive, impactful, calm, peaceful, grounded day. And those are different ways that you can engage with me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And this has been another incredible episode. And I really hope our listeners have enjoyed this journey into stress as much as I have, because I have learned so much speaking with you in this interview and getting your perspective on stress, stress loads, and how you can actually reduce those things in your life. So thank you so much for your time today. It has been fantastic having you on the podcast, Christopher.
Thank you so much, Petra. It has been a gift and a wonderful, rare opportunity to spend time with you, supporting your listeners. And again, if there's anything that I can do to support you, either on a personal level as well, I'm open to doing that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And take care of yourself, Christopher.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please subscribe, share on social media, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and the Journey blog. Sending you love and courage, and see you next week.